Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and I am here with Chaos with Sarthorael. Don't get to see him too often in my battles or even in multiplayer, but he is awesome. Love him, the way he glides across the battlefield. Such a unique unit with lots of unique stats as well, and the fact that he has some crazy resistance to melee, causes terror, spellcaster unbreakable, tons of stats. He's almost as tanky health-wise as Kolek, not as much armor, but still pretty powerful. And then his, he inflicts magical attacks, and then where is it? Encourage as well. Where is it? Oh, magic resistance 25, missile resistance. There it is. So 60%. So this guy is insane. Very, very hard to shoot down. So yeah, he's awesome to embed in your army, but very pricey at that. So I'm going to be facing off against Indypride. He is bringing Bretonnia. The reason we're playing them is because we do get some of our regiments of renown back for both of these factions. So I'm going to be showing them off somewhat. So my build is somewhat interesting. I wanted to go a little bit more wider than you typically see Chaos. So the way I did that is basically I brought some Chaos Marauders. Typically, I don't really bring these guys. They're more like tar pits that I just see melt away very quickly. But in this case, I did pair them with Aspiring Champions. Aspiring Champions. The reason for that is they have, where is it? Encourage. So this will give you leadership bonuses to nearby allies. So that means that these guys now are sitting at 73 leadership, so they'll tank it out a little bit longer in melee, and especially against, you know, potential infantry from Bretonnia, they should be doing pretty good. So I have 2 wings of those, just helping to be a little bit wider in terms of my army. And then to back them up, I have Chaos Warriors with halberds, just because they're going to give me that charge against large foes, armor piercing, and anti-large. So yeah, they're going to be there to rebuff charges against these flanks. So I have those guys. In the rear, I have a third and final Chaos Warriors halberds, and they're just going to be skulking around the back lines to prevent rear strikes from cavalry. And they're at the moment going to be protecting 2 chosen swordsmen. Or I guess not even swordsmen, just 2 chosen warriors, a lot of them wielding axes, it would seem. So might be worthwhile to bring chosen with halberds, but I figured I was going to cost a little bit more, give the halberds to other infantry. I don't think I really need like super amazing units with halberds. Just the mere threat of having halberds on the field is enough to rebuff cavalry. You don't necessarily, in my opinion, have to give them to your most expensive units. Trim costs and go a little bit wider overall in your army. What else have I brought? Well, that's the meat of it, but I do have a couple other units. Where are they? Yeah, so in the center, this one's going to be pretty critical. One of the regiments of renown, it's the Summoners of Rage, Dragon Ogres with a bound lightning storm, or I can't remember. We'll look it up in a sec. But these guys are freaking awesome. So they're pretty dope for a couple reasons. One is going to be that they do magical attacks. That's going to help me against some of Bretonnia's special cav. And then, let's see, or that's Sarthorael, come on. Anyways, these guys do magic damage, anti-large, scaly skin, armor piercing, blah, blah, blah. And I can't click on it for some reason. But anyways, believe me that, there we go. Chain lightning, there you go. A single cast use, good against armor, strong versus multiple units, causes major magical damage. So that plus what Sarthorael can bring as well, one of his spells, what is it? Yeah, go ahead and Golden Hounds here. Pretty cheap spell, I can cast it multiple times, major magical damage, so both of those combined will allow me to shred any cavalry that gets tied down. You know, I have my halberds on all flanks, they're pretty much protecting stuff, they'll be protecting the rear. The second these cavalry get tripped into combat, I can really sink a lot of spells into them, so this is a pretty, it may not seem like it at face value, but yeah, it's a pretty big anti-cavalry build, without too many monsters or things that could get countered. And then lastly, but certainly not least, are going to be these Marauder cavalry. I wanted something to poke and prod at the enemy cavalry. These guys do have armor-piercing missiles, so if cavalry get engaged elsewhere, these guys can go ahead and plonk themselves on the sidelines and just toss some supporting fire in there. That's going to be pretty helpful. So what does Indypride have? Well, his main army here has some cavalry, as you'd expect, so we can go over that real quick. The first one is going to be a Grail Knight unit positioned on this side. So awesome units, some of the top tier Bretonnian cavalry, and they're mostly going to be anti-large, which is why, in my case, I didn't really bring that many monsters, knowing that, you know, that would be the strong suit of a lot of his cavalry. So one of them is hidden there. I'm going to sniff him out here soon. Up to the center, he does have 2 questing knights. One of them going to be a regiment of renown. So both questing knights have the, you know, anti-infantry bonuses, and that's going to be their focus. This one here has a little bit, what are their special abilities? Looks like they're immune to psychology, and they have some other stats on them as well. Why can't I click on that? Oh, anyways, they're pretty powerful. Let's take a look at them, actually. The Champions of Cornell. Nice look at these guys. So looking pretty dope. Always love the regiments of renown. Always looking beautiful. And behind them, you do have some supporting units. A little bit more heavy on the infantry than I guess you would have expected from Bretonnia. But he has some pretty good foot squire units that, if they had a Grail Relic or maybe some other units, could hold up pretty decently against most infantry. But I do have Chosen in the mix, and they should shred that. So he's got to be careful. He's got 2 spearmen at arms, perhaps to help out on the cavalry flank or just tie my guys down. In the center, he does have the Fae as well, so she can help regen. He's got a lot of Lore of Life on her, so she can help regen on some of his elite cavalry, keep them up and running. 2 peasant bowmen, nothing special on them, but they're just going to plonk away at perhaps some of my marauders. The Beast Slayers here, again, another anti-large choice, so I believe he probably expected to see a lot more big monsters from Chaos, which is a tempting idea, but sometimes you got to try and build your builds around the anticipation, which is what I did here, going a bit more wide and infantry heavy. And then finally, he does have a trebuchet that's going to be taking its pick at my guys. First couple shots are going to hit my Chaos Marauders, trying to soften up that front line. And then as my Chosen start to get into range, or even my Halberds, he's probably going to switch targets. He has a final unit here, also hidden. Knights of the Lion-Hearted, Knights of the Realm here with some magical damage that they can do. So Indy bringing a lot more of these regiments around this time in the fight. It's cool to see. And the Lion-Hearted here with the red coat of paint, obviously trying to derive itself a little bit from history with Richard the Lionheart of England. And there comes the trebuchet shots coming up and over. And he's going to start to pummel my front lines. But again, the benefit of me going, somewhat wide means that I don't really care if he does some preliminary damage against my guys. I have the bodies to spend. And the knights are just going to sit there and perhaps allow me to tangle with them. Meanwhile over here, lots of hordes getting in the mix. And then starting to get some preliminary shots, armor-piercing shots, with my Marauder Horsemen. Again, as long as I have a little bit of reinforcements, they're going to be good to ward these guys away. So taking a little bit of chunk out their health. Here comes my front line. Notice my disposition as well. I'm going to be coming back with a lot of my units in this wide front, and then keeping my halberds stationed on the flanks, and of course having some reserves, plus these anti-cavalry. They're going to be on emergency response for when I need it. And meanwhile here, I'm just going to sit pretty for the time being and just chip away at his foot squires. I don't want to sit here too long, but I figured I did want to soften up some of his perhaps elite infantry. And he's going to start to target my halberds and maybe pivot over to my Chosen. I'm okay with losing these halberds because I'd rather trade against some of his foot squires. These halberds, I don't necessarily need them as much here. So I'm okay to sit pretty for a little while. But the second he starts to target some of my Chosen, I'm going to want to move up. Same thing goes with these Chaos Marauders. Don't really mind losing them too much. But I figured at this point, done a decent amount of HP damage. And yeah, he notices that and is definitely going to pull on out of there. So there you go, the slow and steady push forward. Gonna try and feint with my Marauder Horsemen. Do a little bit of a charge here against his foot squires, play with them, do a feint, and then again, try and rally my guys up through the rear. But Sarthorael is gonna go and put himself right up in the middle with his spells potentially to unleash, but I'm waiting for Cav to engage. I'm gonna engage Marauders against Spearmen, which will be to my benefit. Oh, and take a look at this. Here he comes wading in. And then right on these guys, getting those hounds off. Gonna do ridiculous damage on them. Actually, not that much. So take that back. Not too much. But he's very slippery of a lord. He's gonna pull out of there. And it did do a fair amount of damage to those peasant bowmen. Meanwhile, on the back, I'm just pulling his guys right into the waiting grasp of my units. Getting all kinds of spells off on him. But I have Chosen nearby. And that's really gonna force him away. So Sarthorael here. As long as you have good support, he'll do work. And then meanwhile, I find a way to pierce through this position with my one and only unit of big monsters. And they're just going to come and bowl through the flanks of his front lines, casting units aside, plus Sarthorael as well. The 1-2 punch combo right through the gut is going to be super, super devastating. Meanwhile, on the rear, I've just got my Chaos Warriors with halberds. Again, just stationed around the flank. I mean, they're literally facing backwards, just waiting to rebuff the cavalry, so he's forced to kind of go around. The only real target he has is against Chaos Marauders, but again, the second he gets himself committed, I can just cast spells and do some damage. So I've done a fairly good job of negating them. Chaos Warriors back here were also defending, and then meanwhile, the Marauders, like I was saying, doing what I was expecting them to do. Just sit pretty on the flank and just get, you know, pour in the armor-piercing fire into his guys. And yeah, it's going to force him to reconsider. He's pretty mad about that, so he's going to get some trebuchet fire into them. And again, pulling back the combo of my lords here. Or, sorry, this lord singular, and then the other one, who should effectively be a lord. This high-tier dragon ogre unit also helping to rebuff that cavalry. Up to the center, more cavalry engaged. I'm going to get another one of those magical spells against these forces. And it's going to eat away at them. Let's get a nice view of Sarthorael in here. And Indy's having a really hard time. Normally with Sarthorael... Oh, am I going to get a spell off here? I was trying to, but yeah, normally with Sarthorael, you'd like to get a lot of anti-large sunk into him, and Indy did have that. Beast Slayers had a lot of cavalry in the mix that would like to, you know, they're chomping at the bit to get in, but with those halberds in the rear line, just preventing him from getting everywhere, and then my guys back here, Summoners of Rage, just very scary units, forcing his cavalry back, preventing him from doing anything. You know, in the front ranks, he is holding, but the numbers of the Chosen, aspiring champions, Marauders have been kind of seen off the battlefront, still in some numbers, but the Chosen waiting in are eventually going to just seep through the center, corrode his front line like, you know, acid through metal here, and then we're going to make our way through, and then at that point, you know, what do the cavalry have to anvil on? Nothing much holding them in place, and I can just go to town. So yeah, very incredibly hard lord to tie down. And I just kind of glided out of that cavalry trap there. And the animations on him are pretty spectacular. There he goes, he's charging into me. I was trying to get a spell off against him, another one of these hounds. Doing a decent amount of damage on them. Let's see just how much was that. Still doing away. Okay, maybe chipped away like a quarter of their health. So yeah, every time the cavalry gets even close, he was hoping to knock out these weak units, turn the tide against them with the foot squires nearby, but man, those bound spells just helping me do everything. You know, the ground that I can't cover with these guys, they just cast a spell behind them, and they can be kind of everywhere doing their anti-cavalry buffs. Or jobs, or rolls, I should say. So yeah, I guess I stumbled across a pretty decent build here. At least in terms of this matchup. Gonna be using my tentacle stick here as well. Punish these guys. Oh my god. Whoa, Commodore Cassandora trying to get off on some of my Chosen. Does flatten a couple of them, but they just pick themselves right back up. And he's still circling. My Marauder Cav have come back. Could we even bring them back in to tie down the enemy? But at this point, the battle seems like it may be decided here as the Fae does try and fight against Sarthorael. Oh my god. Where did we launch her? Okay, she's getting out of here super quickly. Gonna try and reform, abandoning her army, and here comes the plotting giant coming after her, screeching as he flies over the train. That is awesome. Those peasant bowmen not gonna turn around to help her out. I wouldn't draw his attention either. And here come our saviors. Some knights trying to help out. So I abandon that pursuit and charge right into them, accepting this fate. So she's going to sit pretty in the back. Did get some heals off against herself, but now here come my own Summoners of Rage. We'll see how this engagement goes. And yeah, that's going to be enough to force them back. Indy getting some healing off on them to try and, you know, lick their wounds, so to speak. But he still doesn't really have much of a counter against this Death Blob. Summoners of Rage riding through here. Oh, man. Even if they were surrounded, I think it would probably still pull off a victory. These peasants stand no chance. So the knights gonna come charge right through, skewering both. But oh man, here comes Sarthorael. Let's take a look at the stats on my guys. Did they even take any form of a beating? I guess they are taking a little bit of damage against these Grell Knights, but Plague of Rust on my part popped against them. Minus 30 armor, saving a little bit of that mana just to put the battle even more in my favor. And it is proving devastating. You know, across the battlefield, the rest of my unit's going to be pursuing Indy's forces. Chaos Marauders. Where are the Chosen? Huh. Chosen seem to... Oh, okay, they're over on the flank. Still in pretty good health. So yeah, the Fae Still topped off, but there's not much healing that can be done against the bloodied corpses of her army, so she's going to decide to pull out on a retreat there. One last comet maybe making its way. Here comes the last hope. And a bit of a whiff there. Kills one of our guys. But the horde continues, and there he goes. I'm going to get another one of these hounds. Very, very cheap spell that does good area of effect. Nice against closely tucked together units. Like a little trebuchet crew. And there you have it. So pretty fun fight. I think I've heard that Chaos isn't necessarily top tier in multiplayer. It's a little bit hard to run. Your options aren't that variable. But I think I'm starting to finally get the hang of them. In the past, I had gone a little bit more monster heavy, which is kind of predictable as Chaos, relatively easy to counter. I am kind of warming up to this type of build. I do want to try this a little bit more as the DLC is out, try some of this in quick match, etc. But just going wide with Chaos, synergizing the Marauders with Aspiring Champions, and definitely having these Summoners of Rage with their Lightning spell. Oh god, that's just awesome in terms of what the damage they can do, and a Sarthorael as well, being really dope. Just his versatility. Yeah, I'm going to try this build a lot more in the future. So thank you, Indy, for blooding it in the first time. I'm guessing if he knew what was coming, he could tailor his Bretonnia build a little bit differently and counter it. But I think I may have caught him a little bit off guard with the build here. His unit's still trying to get some healing off. I don't think he's going to get much done there. They're, yeah, teetering at 794 health. Trying to take my Chosen down, but even them on their low health still have 1400 HP. Yeah, oh, here comes the charge. Sending my guys reeling. Pretty good there. But here he comes. Arcane Conduit being popped, so he's readying another spell against these guys. There you go. Not quite sure who's still alive on the Bretonnia side. Apparently no one. We're going to call it a Pyrrhic victory. But mostly that's going to be due to the fact that my my low tier units died. The remainder, I think the Chosen, Aspiring Champions, and other were very much still alive at the end of that fight. So let's take a look at some of the stats, see how various things traded in the final scoreboard here. So yeah, looking at my guys, actually that's pretty insane. 124 on Chaos Marauders. You don't really expect to see that too often. Some of them may have gotten into the Spearmen at Arms and killed them. So yeah, just keeping them alive against the front line, pretty good. Chosen were allowed to prevent, you know, they were kept out of the initial fight, out of the cavalry charges, and just did work against foot squires, etc. So doing what I needed them to do. Halberds were buffing cavalry, and Sarthorael just being, you know, ping-ponging everywhere, getting almost as many kills as these Summoners of Rage. And those guys were mostly knocking out high-value targets, punching through, hitting foot squires in the flank, charging after cavalry, so definitely a lot of value there. And yeah, I really like this army composition, so definitely try it out yourself, use it as a basis, and try and swap things out a bit. And I definitely do recommend bringing the Marauder Horsemen and sitting it tight in the center of your force. It's really good there. You don't try and do anything fancy, sending it forward initially. I was doing a little bit of that, but if you can pull it back into the center, and just have it do a supporting role against any large targets, it will actually rake in a fair amount of kills. And then in the late game, you can kind of unleash it once the battlefield has been opened up and get a lot of priority kills against, you know, trebuchets or bowmen, etc. So that's it for this battle. Hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more, and I will see you in the next one. And as always, check out Indypride's channel, where he posts a lot of awesome content. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.